IJBEL Studio Talk. I'm Professor Andreas Zins from Curtin University, Malaysia, and the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Business Events and Legacies. I welcome first of all, of our main speaker guests and a few of colleagues around the table, and particularly those who joined us online today. We drive the conversation on how business events of any type, be it conferences, corporate meetings, incentive gatherings, or exhibitions, can make a wider contribution to the host society and economy. Governments and national statistical offices are using the buzzwords beyond GDP, beyond the gross domestic product. And yes, that's our topic today, and our regular topic for these studios and also for our journal. Today we have Mr. Hii Chang Kee, the Permanent Secretary of the Sarawak Ministry of Tourism, Creative Industry and Performing Arts. And by the way, also one of our associate editors of the international editorial team, as our special guest. Sarawak is among the early leaders of this dialogue between government and the business events industries. Mr. Hii is a special guest because of multiple reasons, and I cannot finish to explain and the expertise, his roles in short. But as I mentioned, he is on the editorial board, and of course he is one of the leaders here in the Ministry of Tourism. And this is the reason why I invited him for this talk, to shed light on exactly this intersection, on this dialogue between public governance and the public governance perspective of the government institutions in the industry sector. So, but before we start our conversation, please let me introduce two more guests in today's IJBEL studio. I have here Dylan Reeders-Noel, representing Business Events Sarawak, or formerly called the Convention Bureau Sarawak, on behalf of Amelia Roziman, the CEO. And to my left, it's Dr. Hiram Ting, founder and chair of Sarawak Research Society and organizer and editor-in-chief of the International Journal for Responsible Tourism, and also organizer of several editions of an international conference to the same topic, and even broader than the journal. So without further ado, I would like to jump into say a conversation on various perspectives. I would like to start with a broader question to Mr. Hii about what are the current priorities, maybe also strategies for developing the field of business events in Sarawak.
Right. I think business events has always been a priority for the state government. You can see that the Sarawak state government is one of the few state governments which set up a specific agency to promote, to develop business events, which is Sarawak Convention Bureau, or known as Business Events Sarawak. And also we have yearly budget, not only for operation, but a lot are going into supporting the industry, incentives for business events to be brought into Sarawak, even homegrown events. So for Sarawak government, during the pandemic, actually we come up with a post-COVID-19 development strategy, or in short, PCDS, which runs for 10 years until 2030. So one of the priorities is for tourism ministry, we are looking at two areas. One is ecotourism. Of course, it's destination marketing. Number two will be business events. So by looking at that priorities for the PCDS, we know government is serious about business events. And within that, the aspiration will be one of which we are going to develop the business events industry is we must have 50 homegrown business events in 10 years' time. So this is how we want to develop our industry rather than hopping on other regions to bring in regional events. So our KPI for business events industry is 50 homegrown events, business events within these 10 years. So this is how serious we are.
Thank you for this kind of opening. I have a particular question now. Why do you emphasize on homegrown?
Yeah.
What is the difference?
Okay.
I mean, there are others, right? There are other conferences, but why do you put particular emphasis on homegrown?
Yeah. You see, all this while we have been bidding, right, events, right? Some of them probably initiated from other regions, like West Malaysia, Sabah, other countries as well. No doubt we bid, they come in, that will generate economic benefits as well. But why homegrown? Because I think for us to develop the business events industry, I think it's not only in terms of dollars and cents, but how we help the local economic sectors, research sectors to have a homegrown Sarawak initiated events. And with that homegrown events, we can also try to go into priority areas which we have not been focusing. For regional events, I think a lot will be on, to us, a lot will be medical, a lot of technology. But what about social aspects, tourism, community-based tourism? What about protecting and conserving our culture and heritage? So by having homegrown events, I think we have certain control over the type of business events we want to develop, the niche area we want to develop. And at the same time, we can export our homegrown events once they reach a certain maturity. Probably some countries want to bid for conferences initiated by Sarawak. So that is our way forward.
Yeah, I think this is a very promising approach. Yesterday, I had already also a conversation with stakeholders in MIRI. We started also discussing how can we identify, how can we promote this idea, of homegrown. Homegrown, I mean, is a shortcut for exactly what you explained. Yeah, that there are massive advantages related to if it is down to earth, it is regionally and culturally with roots in the local culture and so on, that you can keep it for longer, right? This is, I think, the idea, not only to develop new topic themes and say bring people together for once a year or once in 10 years only, and then so there are multiple aspects why there are emphasis on this homegrown. Coming back to my yesterday's discussion, which is not, it just started, not finished, is how to help, where to start with say really new homegrown things. Yeah, I don't know whether say the practitioner or have a recipe for that, but I mean, financial incentives is one part which is important, right? I think also about where you can, bring people above a certain threshold, and take the risk or take the, say, or to be brave enough, simply to be brave enough and say, oh yeah, this could be a topic to share and to celebrate, kind of. Like, it's more question. I don't have an answer for that, but any ideas, how to structurally, say in a clever concept, driving that development.
So I think during the pandemic, of course, we can't bring events into Sarawak. So that's where we start to think, what can we do for the industry? So that's where the idea of homegrown events start. And homegrown events, we give certain special incentives, right? in terms of criteria for the normal business events application, we actually relax some of the criteria to help homegrown events. So this is where Sarawak Convention Bureau of Business Events Sarawak comes into play through the Ministry of Tourism, Creative Industry and Performing Arts. So I think we are receiving quite a number of applications, and it happened at least, I would say, about 10 events has actually started because of that incentive during the pandemic, right? And some of them are even going on now. So I think this is how we actually give incentive. We have a policy, but we should have an incentive to make it happen.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, Mr. Hii,
Yeah.
and also Dr. Andreas. Now with the homegrown, I picked up what you mentioned earlier on. It's not just about incentives alone. Incentives is a really important factor when it comes to homegrown events. However, we also believe that advocacy is also important. You know, when we started operations as Sarawak Convention Bureau 16 years ago, one of the hardest things we had to do was convince our local people that, hey, you can actually host a conference in Kuching. You don't have to do it in KL or any other parts of the world. You don't have to just attend a conference. Now, when it comes to homegrown, we're actually telling them now that you can actually come up with your own idea, with your own topic, and be in control with what you want to present to the world. And you have the backing of the Sarawak government. So you see, capacity building is also a very, very vital part in supporting homegrown events, teaching them education and telling them what are the steps to build up this homegrown event and how to market them. So in the next couple of months or so, we are going to be having courses and workshops that addresses specifically homegrown. I mean, we have started it even during the pandemic. Really, we've got sessions that addresses this. So I believe that on top of financial support and incentives, advocacy, capacity building, and education is also equally important when it comes to homegrown events.
Yeah, if I may add on, I mean, every stakeholder plays an important role. From the government side, from the ministry side, they provide all the incentive, and we have agencies, relevant bodies providing education, capacity building program. Like what Prof. Andreas mentioned earlier, we need to have the courage to do it. So it is high time that every stakeholder, including NGOs and NPOs, can take the initiative to put forward the ideas, talk to the relevant stakeholder, and let's work out something together. Even though the pandemic has disrupted almost everything, there's a saying: crisis breeds innovation, crisis breeds opportunities. We actually see the opportunity to network with different stakeholders during this period of time, not only those locally, but also those abroad. And when we discuss with these people, we talk about ideas, we talk about what we want to do in the future. And when we share the same values, when we share the same purpose, then many things become possible. So I would say that we need strategic alliance with all the stakeholders to make things work. And we need to set up a core group of people who share the same ideas, same passions, and we can start small. We don't have to do something big right from the beginning. Make the first step, do something small, yet it is significant. Then things will develop over time. Yeah.
Thank you for the additional remarks. Let me come back to the bigger picture again. Asking, a long time, many places in the world, many convention bureaus, of course, explained the economic benefits of hosting. Every city and destination and organization did that. And in the meantime, other aspects other than economic, the immediate economic impact is also important. It's not to say it's no longer important. We all know that it's essential for many service businesses related to business events. But in the meantime, we also are concerned to have, say, other, say, areas that there is some effect, some hopefully positive effect. And this, let us focus a little bit on that wider area. Of course, we started already the discussion talking about homegrown events, and implicitly we mean, okay, fostering existing networks in the society, professional and non-professional activities, but say what is the substrate of society, I would say. So it is, we think about society, we think about culture and so on. What other kind of what we call legacy impacts does the government or do we have in mind? Yeah, maybe it's sometimes implicit, sometimes explicitly. Yeah. So I mean I can rephrase the story because Sarawak business events also has criteria in the meantime where any future host of a meeting, of a conference, is invited to name it, yeah, to describe what are, say, effects here in terms of eco, sustainability, or are associated with such meetings. So let us talk a little bit about that when it's open to a wide area, but I think it's worth to reflect a bit on that.
Yeah. So of course, initially, like everybody else, business events is looking at the immediate economic impact. So we started with direct delegate expenditure measurement, like everybody else. Then we thought it's more than that. So we come out with another formula called total economic impact, TEI. All right. So, but I think business events is not only about dollars and cents. All right. We should look beyond what could business events bring in terms of dollars and cents. What about the local community, right? What about changes in terms of social, cultural, and even political? Yeah. So that's why I think we are also one of the bureau or the state government which tries to look at beyond dollars and cents into legacy impact, right? Legacy impact will be looking at how business events can bring about changes. Probably because of the conference, it will bring about some changes on the way we handle things at the local community level, or even influence government policies because of the resolution of the conference, right? So I think it's very important for us to look at legacy impact now. That's why our Convention Bureau also will make it a point that in future applications, they must tell us what will your conference or business events bring about in terms of changes, impact on the local communities. So that's why we are advocating that at this moment. And by the fact that we launched the International Journal of Business Events and Legacy, this is one of the way which says that we are serious about this. You know? So we are all in a team to make this happen.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I see that exactly like that. Nobody has the perfect solution and recipe for that.
Yeah.
It's really a conversation. It's a dialogue where we have jointly try to increase, to interpret, to reflect what could be really recognized and addressed. I always say that it's not so easy to have this conversation because it is not so easy to measure, to quantify.
Right.
Nevertheless, I think it is relevant. We have to break through this bit of the wall, you know, that commonly some management guru said, what you cannot measure, what you cannot quantify, you cannot manage. Yes and no is my answer to that. It's correct. If you translate that into, say, the world of business events, of course, everybody, the PCOs, they try to manage the event itself perfectly, to have a perfect service, everything smoothly, to achieve the immediate goals of a gathering, a meeting, incentive, whatever. But when we talk about legacies, is the question, can we really manage? Who can manage? Is it the conference organizer? Is it the association, the corporation? Probably not. However, and this is why you also put that as a criteria, at least as somebody should start early enough to reflect on, right?
Yep.
To address it. And I mean, it's not a promise. I think nobody can make a promise that in 5 years, the destination, the society will look like this and that, right? But at least to address the touch points where there is a leverage, there is the potential, right? So this is how I see that. So it's I don't subscribe to that. We simply cannot measure. So okay, it's beyond our fantasy.
Yeah.
No, and I think this is exactly where we have to, to again and again and again to try to increase awareness, to also to reinterpret, what's beyond the GDP, what's beyond the figures, the hard facts, and so on. I know that there is a transition phase. I would say it's a transition phase that it started already a few decades with the sustainable tourism, that and say conference and nice tourism, even came into a bad light, because of the images, the footprint that is generated through traveling. And I mean, it causes concern, and it is, of course, it's a serious issue, and the conference organizers also tried and have now the responsibility to go green, reduce paper, and be responsible with the food supplies, and so many criteria popped up, but still the criteria of the footprint through traveling per se is not solved. So for me, it's my perspective, it's to be discussed. I think an answer, or say the thesis, in this dialogue is, and what about the impact that the wider positive impact that such meetings and conference and so can have? So looking at the positive side of the account, not only on the so-called negative footprint, because I think there is not a solution that the black and white and say, okay, a total ban and we completely have to go hybrid or online. You can solve the question now.
Yeah.
It's not the complete picture. This is what I fear. So it's not a clever answer. But I think we have to see on both sides. So of course the cost, what traveling and business events, meetings have, and on the other side, what is the gains? And these can be incredible, right? So a few other ideas, my personal opinion, and to have this, if you enter this conversation, there is currently not a clear solution against the carbon footprint, right? When it comes to travel, but we also, trade, many other things, human activities have a cost and a benefit. So from that perspective, from the wider perspective, I think it is very, very justified to illustrate these legacies, positive legacy impacts that we can induce. So my tips a bit of to that. Maybe you have a
impact and legacies are two big words. In academia, whenever we talk about impact, more than often we talk about impact factor, which is something measurable, tangible. for various reasons. But it's, again, high time for us to pay more attention to real impact on the community, on the industry. Even though it is not something tangible, it is not easily measurable, but it's important for us to look into it, work with different stakeholders, and to be able to recognize impact, real impact contribution made to the industry and the community. Now, when we talk about business events, it should be more than just event per se. It could be a 3-day event, it could be a 2-day event, but the impact, the legacy should not be bounded by a certain date, time, venue. It goes beyond that. And this is why for homegrown event, it will be this is an important initiative, because to be able to do that, to progress well, you need a team to work together, not only people from Sarawak, but also committee members from other places. They plan, they prepare. Even though this particular conference is scheduled on a specific date, but the preparation, the ongoing progress, that's how we make a greater impact on the delegates, on the industry, on the community. The dialogue that we have with the community members, how can we get them to be more involved in the event? So it's in research, in academia, we start to talk about how we can mobilize knowledge into practice. So yes, we organize conference, but even before the conference begins, or when the conference ends, we want to talk about, all the plans which are actionable. If we end the conference by taking a group photo, nothing wrong with that. Nodding heads, nothing wrong with that. Shaking hands, nothing wrong with that. We have all the conventions, summits, doing all this. But there must be something actionable, prepared before the conference, committed at the end of the conference, so that every participant, delegate, or stakeholders involved, they know what they can do next. This is partly why we look into responsibility. It's about taking actions, putting words into actions. And next time when we come again, we have something to evaluate. We have something to celebrate. We have something to talk about, to progress, to advance the dialogue, to perpetuate whatever we are doing. So it is something long-term. These are milestones for us to achieve. But if we do that, I'm quite sure we are moving towards the right direction.
Yeah, I've got something to add to what you were saying earlier on. To both of you, what you were both saying earlier on. We all know that legacy impact, or whatever impact you want to call it, it's really, really intangible, really hard to identify. But if we wanted to address sector, local community, we talk about local community a lot, economy, the environment, and even the politics of it. When it comes to politics of it, it means that what kind of policies we are looking into. Now, this reminds me of a mentor that shared this case to me when I first started my career in business events about 16 years ago. He said this, when you have a problem that you can't sleep, and to the extent you can't sleep, and keep thinking about this problem, a conference will probably be able to address the issue. So he shared with this. In one of the countries, if you have a problem, just host a conference. You'll solve your problem. You see, in a country, in one of the African nations, he didn't name the African nation, but he shared a case of what he worked on in the past. They had issues with AIDS. AIDS was widespread in their country, and they were bidding for an AIDS-related conference. And you know what was a bidding tagline? Please come to my country to address this problem, to address this issue. So you see, we think of when we want to bring a conference in, there's a conference owner, and we're always thinking about incentives. What will it benefit the conference owner if you bring your conference here? It could be financial incentive, it could be your tours, it could be, meet the premier or CM at the time, or meet the prime minister, all kinds of things. But we fail to think about how to sell this possibility of hosting a conference in your country by saying, look, if you come to our country, if you host it here, there are these problems that you could solve for us.
Yeah.
And you would leave a legacy by having your conference here.
Mm.
And this legacy is not tangible. It will not be, you may not be able to see it in this lifetime, maybe in the next lifetime, maybe in 5-10 years. In a really, really simple context, it would be like this. An incentive group going to a longhouse like Nangga Uko, your area. They build a library there. When they build a library there, right, it plant a seed to one of the kids there on reading. Say, for example, reading on human body and things like that. He becomes interested in medicine. 5 to 15 years down the road, he goes into medical school, becomes a doctor. 30 years later, he becomes a specialist in an area that is groundbreaking. How do you measure that? You can't measure that at all. It becomes really intangible. So you see, like you mentioned just now, the positive impact, negative impact. When in the medical field, they said that there are risks when we do this operation for you or you take this medicine, but that risk can be managed. It's manageable. So when we talk about carbon footprint or all the other things, it's identifiable. All those risk factors are identifiable. It's manageable. But the benefits of legacy impact is beyond that, way beyond that.
Yeah, I think, thank you for this illustration. I think simply to convey this message, we need such good examples.
Yeah.
Small, big examples. And this brings me also a bit back to my agenda. Maybe you have also some really good, outstanding, say, examples, whether we call it legacies or not. It's a bit of a modern vocabulary. But can you think about from past, Sarawak, what was, if you look back maybe 5 or 10 years and it goes back to this and that.
Yeah. Of course, when we talk about business events, it covers all sectors. So I think one of the examples, like even our world-renowned the Rainforest World Musical Festival, right? It's not simply just a musical festival. That happens properly. People start to mingle around, dance, enjoy the music at night. But never know, daytime, there are a lot of workshops around. And the purpose of this workshop is not only for the participants, but actually some local communities, local musicians, they can come and mingle and exchange ideas with world-class musicians. So in a way, I think the impact will be how the world-level musicians start to motivate the local boys, local children. Hey, music is an area, it's a career too, right? So how they can develop the local traditional music, musical instruments into something which can be shared to the world, like our sape, now it's becoming a world-renowned musical instrument. And that is not the only example. Other events like sports events, all right? And like the Spartan race we brought in, not only people are going through obstacle race, but there are workshops, there are sessions besides the actual race. So the workshop also, we invited students, local young athletes to actually come together with the world from every corner. Then they can exchange ideas, how to develop our youth industry, our sports industry, like Spartan race. So I think there are too many examples that we can leverage on, but I think the message is every business event, they are bound to have legacies that you can think of, all right? Not only in terms of dollars and cents, like what you say, it could go a long way to influence even a single participant. I think you make it. So that's why in our PCDS, the aspiration for tourism industry is for both tourism and business events. When we want to achieve this by 2030, we must empower the local communities. So this is something which you can think of. You want to achieve something in business events, you want to achieve something in tourism, what can you do for the local communities? How can you empower the local communities so that they can participate, they can benefit, from what we do, right? And also in the way, in our aspiration statement, if you look at it, by doing all this, we also aim to conserve, preserve our heritage, culture, and arts as well. So I think the aspiration statement of our PCDS for tourism and business events are very clear. Not dollars and cents only, but how to benefit the local communities, how to conserve our environment, how to preserve our culture and heritage. So all these are areas we can look into beyond money.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. If you allow, jump to our link to our previous studio, when it was an international studio together with a conference, where one of our other associated, Francesco D'Angelo from Milan, presented also an interesting story, but I mean, it's not, storytelling, but about Milan. And I don't know whether you have any, imagination. Milan has been traditionally is a second largest city in Italy, northern Italy, an industrial city, always full of smoke, rather dirty gray. Even I'm living not too far away, never visited because it was not attractive. And she explained to the audience, that Milan successfully transformed this appearance and the image into a very attractive tourism destination, but not through tourism promotion per se, but through hundreds of small events that they scheduled in a very clever way, and of course, not primarily attracting tourists. Yes, of course, but inviting the locals. I think it's a very impressive example, because you think about Milan as large city. How can you move? How can you change this dirtiness? I mean, this image connotation. How can you change within? I would say, he did not mention exact the time frame, but within less than 10 years, into an attractive thing where every day, every weekend, there is something going on, and not only the big things. And the leverage, what I took from her presentation, is only through participation of the locals. So you do that, the book workshop and the library here and the music, the flute and that festival, not for the tourists in the first hand, but for developing a local, life atmosphere. And this transcends into a much more appealing destination image. So for me, a very interesting story. I mean, if this is possible for such a larger, big, in European terms, it's a larger, big city. If this works for such a complex city where tourism is not the major thing, it's this industry, fashion, and education and service sector. This is what dominates the economy. Then it should be even much easier for smaller towns.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, of course, it's a different scale, but you have a better, leverage through the local communities networks. In a big town, everything is more or less anonymous. It's not easy to touch, but they did that really in a clever, concise way. So with a good scheduling of events, a good events calendar, and so for me, very kind of wow experience, because I'm European, I know a bit also the boundaries. It's not so easy to say, launch a campaign, €2 million, and in 2 years we have a new nice image, right? It will not work, and if you don't have the support from more or less the local communities. So many It's not a single.
Festivals.
Yeah, it's small festival.
We've got a lot of festivals and events in Sarawak. We should be able to. We should have.
No, I mean,
we should be able to surpass Hiram.
I mentioned that on purpose, that because culture is homegrown. This is not that you transport and you say you make a Bach and a Mozart festival here. This is not homegrown, right? I mean, you can do that in big cities. Yeah, nice to have, but it's not homegrown. So yeah, bit of
I mean,
experience.
many people like to live or die with a legacy. It's too early for me to say that, but I believe we can play our part. Mr. Hii obviously brings us the macro perspective of business events, but what Prof. Andreas mentioned earlier reminds me of a recent project that we are doing in a small town in Bao district. It is an aging town. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, it will be no surprise if people start to move away because there's no reason for them to stay, apparently. However, what we did is we met the local leaders. We talked to the elderly people. We told them, you are the national treasure because you represent, you embody the culture, the heritage of this place. And we organize all the small events. Example, Gotong Royong, communal activities to get the community people to come together to clean the space, to clean the place and do some, whatever they can within their capacity. And we work with different people. We bring press as scholars, we write. So writing, events, small events, and getting community people to be involved. And it is still an ongoing project, but last 2 months we have seen that this place suddenly becomes so popular, and there is a temple, adjacent to this small town. We developed a place, a garden. Now it is called Baku Road Mess Garden. Still, we told many people that this is only 20% done. We do not want to rush things because we want to make sure that community people are always involved. They are the decision makers. But the local leader told me for the last 1.5 months, they collected financial contribution more than 5 figures. And these are used to support local communities, doing all the necessary work to develop this garden into something sustainable, where local community becomes the custodians, the stewards, and when visitors come, they don't come as a visit. They don't just come and visit. They come and connect.
Mm-hmm.
They connect to the local people, the culture, and the heritage there. I'm not sure whether this is a legacy, but it is something that we have to build on from time to time. That's what I said earlier. No event is too small. Mm-hmm. We can do it in a significant way. I may not be able to do a great thing, but I can do many small things in a significant way. And when we work together, then the impact is there. Someone asked me, what is the tangible output? I told them, when I see the smiling faces of the community leaders and people, I feel rewarded. They welcome us, they trust us, they want us to stay there as long as possible. Perhaps that's how we make an impact in this place, but it is an ongoing project. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I took note, and for me, what I take is developing, strengthening local pride. I think this is something, is one of the keys to strengthen those regions that are peripheral, that are not the center of the world, of activities of the media, of all the attention. And if we don't take care of that, you mentioned that people, young generation, they leave, they have no reason to stay. Yeah, and this is a poverty of cultural degradation. I mean, it happens not only in Sarawak, it happens in many areas, in developed countries. It happens the same thing. unless there are initiatives, and not necessarily, from the tourism guys, but homegrown, that develop and strengthen, give people multiple reasons, to enjoy that. Right. I mean, there's not a single recipe for that, but doing such things, such projects, I think is fantastic.
If I may add one point, partly thanks to the pandemic, people become more and more aware of environmental, social issues. There is actually a survey elsewhere, not in Malaysia, that the findings show that people are more willing to pay, to spend, if they know that a significant amount of what they pay goes to the community, goes to sustaining environment and all these issues. So this is what we can look into, including business events, how we can design the nudges in such a way that it really stimulates people not only to join the conference, but making a positive contribution to the events and to the stakeholders. So visitors will come, they connect, and they are more than willing to donate. In fact, they are asking, how did you maintain this place? Is there a place where I can make a financial contribution? So things happen in a positive way, and we hope this continues.
I want to add something. I mean, while all of us were talking, I've been making a mind map of what we're talking about. No, I mean, the key words here like events, sports, sustainability, PCDS, legacy impact, homegrown, all these things, right? I find that they all have one thing in common, which is, if there's one thing we have to take away to today's local community involvement.
Yeah.
It seems like this is really important, that we have to get local community involved in almost every sector that we work on. This is just what I come up with right now.
The holding factor.
Yeah, the glue that keeps it together.
That's why I mentioned in our aspiration statement for the PCDS for tourism and business events, we have to do all this through empowerment of the local communities. That's very important. Otherwise, it may bring in dollars and cents, but who does it benefit? Probably the handlers, the tour agents, the transport handlers. But what about those people who are staying, especially those staying near the products? What do they benefit? They look and see that people pass by their houses just like that without any involvement. No, I think the government wants every single people staying around the area, the whole kampong, the whole settlement, to be involved. They can become guides. They can sell and demo the local handicrafts. They can prepare meals for the people who visit them. So this is what we call local community empowerment, especially for tourism and business event sectors.
I have maybe a brief question about which strategic partners are, say, important from the ministry perspective. I mean, of course, we touched already many, say, the smaller, the homegrown things without naming it, but maybe from a policy perspective, you have some priorities. What are the strategic partners having to really to enable such positive legacy impacts?
So government, we see ourselves as facilitator, right? We facilitate in terms of of course, funding is part of it, but making things happen, I think we need strategic partners. So we facilitate. I think in Sarawak, we work very closely, not only the ministry, the Sarawak Convention Bureau, but I think the industry players, right? Like Sarawak Business Events Association, we have Masios, Sarawak chapter, and we also have Tourism Federation, who are our destination marketing agencies, right? I think destination marketing and business events, they go hand in hand together, right? So I think it would be an all-encompassing partnership. It's not from government top down, right? When we come with PCDS, we will say this is not government's plan. It's not government's policy, but it's a plan and policy which we all come together, agree, and we move forward together. So this is why I think strategic partnership is very important if you want to make a legacy impact happens. So we impose it as one of the criteria in your application, but rest assured that we are not going to leave it like what you say, oh, you make it happen. No, I think Convention Bureau, the ministry and the industry together will make it happen. This is what you suggested. So we will move together. We will facilitate.
Yeah. We want to offer the audience and Mr. Oscar or Mark.
Yeah, we are moving towards the end of the session. I read already some comments, what I could not see so far, questions, but anyway, we can take some questions, of course. Oh, also from.
Are there any questions?
Colleagues from.
Any questions?
On the
No
table.
questions so far.
So far, no questions.
So far, I don't
No,
know.
Oscar, do you have any questions?
Everything is very clear. Everybody comments.
Okay,
Are you able to hear me?
Dr. Cheong, she's
Dr.
our
Cheong.
managing editor. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you so much for this very interesting and insightful sharing to all the panelists. We do have a few questions here. And actually from the presentation itself, we heard a few of very important keywords like community empowerment, the local pride, and then connect with the community, things like that. And then we want to know about, like, from the homegrown perspective, how would you define homegrown event legacies? Maybe in one word.
In one word or
Not in one word, one sentence. Sorry.
In one word, it will be legacy.
In one sentence, in short.
I think, to me, irrespective whether it is homegrown or it is not homegrown, as long as it is business events, I think is how the business events will bring about impact, right? As we said already, not only dollars and cents, but in terms of how you influence the government policy, all right, at the macro level, and also how it impact change, like the AIDS conference that we mentioned, how it helped the destination to fight or to combat some issues or problems. So, or because of the conference, it actually brings about a new perspective to the local community, how they look at things, how they handle things. I think all this impact, irrespective of whether it's homegrown or it's not homegrown. That's my perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You have another question, because you said a few questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know her.
All my collections here.
Oh, yeah.
I have another question.
Right?
So what are the dilemma or problems that you have encountered when organizing or promoting homegrown event? Because it is relatively new for the government to promote Sarawak. Is there anything we as academicians can help out? Like, is there any problems or dilemma that you have encountered that we as the researchers can come in and
I think a lot of interest homegrown events. Probably we'll leave it to the researcher.
Dr. Ting, maybe I can respond to that. I think first and foremost, those in academia have to step out from our comfort zone and work with practitioners.
Right.
We have been writing papers. We also organize events. However, not all, but many times the way we organize events are not something long term, if I may put it this way. So it's best that we work with various stakeholders, talk to practitioners, how we can collaborate to make sure the events that we organize are more sustainable, more impactful. So I would say one of the dilemmas will be the will to collaborate, to cooperate with various stakeholders in unison for a sustainable future. I hope I responded to your question.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to add. I'd like to add to that. You mentioned quite a few issues there. I think I'd like to add self-confidence or confidence in your destination or confidence in your team when you want to create a homegrown event. Like I mentioned earlier in our discussion, that the hardest thing to do is convincing those potential hosts that they are able to do it here in Kuching, to come up or here in Miri, or even here in Cebu. Now, Curtin, you guys are in Miri, right?
Yeah.
One of the hardest things to do right now for Miri or Curtin, right, is that the lecturers in Curtin, you guys can do it in Miri. You don't have to say, oh, Miri, nothing to do, cannot do, have to do it in Kuching. Nothing like that. You have to think about that you can actually do it in Miri. And if you have anyone out there from a Cebu area like UTS, don't think about doing it in Kuching or Miri. You have to think about how can we do it in Cebu, right? Okay, so that's my point, because 16 years ago, we were actually telling people you can do it in Kuching, in Sarawak, instead of in KL. You know?
Okay.
I think there is a question by
Yeah.
Derek
Yeah.
Lee. Yeah, thank you for the interesting perspectives by the distinguished speakers. May I ask if organizing a gastronomic event and showcasing Sarawak as a creative city of gastronomy, including business events, will be a good start? Why not? As I mentioned, now we need to really look at the range of business events, conferences, seminars, even festivals that we have. We need to diversify so that it encompasses all sectors. Right? We do not want to just focus for those traditionally very frequently hosted events, but how do we move into intangible areas like culture, heritage, which I don't see many conferences touching on those things, social impact, but a lot more on technology, a lot more on So we would like to see conferences like gastronomy, since Kuching has just been listed as one of the UNESCO's Creative City Network of Gastronomy. But do not worry. On hand, I have at least 3 proposals to have gastronomical related conferences before the end of the year. So that is a good start. Yeah, Derek, I think we welcome business events, conferences, even exhibitions, even cooking competition and workshop. Try to showcase what are the unique food of Sarawak. That is very important. Right?
Master Chef.
Yeah.
Master Chef Sarawak.
Yeah. So probably I can see one of the impact brought about by this conference is young people nowadays. How many can really cook laksa in Sarawak? How many can really appreciate and produce like kolok mee? No. So I believe with this sort of workshop, cooking competition, conferences, probably would motivate young people really to try to conserve their traditional food and beverages. I think we can look into that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Hii. I take that as a conclusion. No, not to cut your word. No, it's 1 o'clock and I want to keep the schedule. But I take that as a very good example, because you mentioned youth. We have been talking a lot about, say, heritage and culture, living culture, not only past culture. They're exhibiting some museums and so on. So, but living culture to strengthen local pride as a I think a good example. Involving media. Media is nowadays, it is important, to also showcase and to have a kind of the mirror to young people, to others, but particularly to young, to show, hey, it's an interesting area. It's not old-fashioned. I mean, cooking is old-fashioned, but how to master this dish or this, that, and even though it is local, it is a heritage thing, and worldwide it is celebrated, recognized, UNESCO. And so I think we have to explain that repeatedly through events is a good thing.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a good wrap up. I think not covering all, but yeah, Geoff wants to have
I know.
the final word.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have Mr. Awa is going to write a paper for the IJBEL, and he's an experienced event organizer from Great Event. Awa, can I invite you to share about your event?
Oh, sure. Thanks, Geoffrey. Thanks for inviting me to share just a little bit, because I think I'm very intrigued by what Mr. Hii and all the distinguished panel talk about empowerment of the local community. In fact, because I think for GRIT, what we do is that majorly we do work with the local community, especially on trail run. One of our most successful trail run is a Jaguar Heritage Trail Run, which every year, except for the past 2 years of the pandemic, I think we fulfill all the requirement. We have a legacy impact. We, in fact, employ 90% of our crew is actually from local. And the homestay when we do our event, homestay not only in that village itself, the entire of that village and the surrounding village itself is full. The thing is that we never apply for any funding from Sarawak, I mean the business events part, because we don't know. But I think this is a very good opportunity, and thanks Geoffrey for inviting me in, and also to be part of I will also write one research for the International Journal of Business Events, because because most importantly, anything can be hearsay, but most importantly we have tangible results. And we have records of how many participants coming up from overseas, how many people are staying in a local homestay. And this is not just by us, it's by the local Action Development Committee. Jaguar have a very good Action Development Committee, I think led by Professor Gabriel Dimbab, and also Dato' Ik is also there. So there were the few people. So I think in Sarawak, there is a lot of local community that are willing to do this. The only thing is that for us, we are working with them, but we don't know how to link with the government. But today, thanks for this forum, I think we know better. I will definitely prep my PowerPoint presentation better with all the keywords from Mr. Hii just now.
So we expect to see application on the table. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think, thank you very much. This was a very good live feedback and also kind of a success factor for this our event. Really,
Right.
I think this is good. So our mission, I started with that. We want to spread the word. We want to keep the dialogue, reflect on what can be done, what are the missing steps and so on, where are the support structures. They are here. I think don't need to convince anybody, but we have to talk about it more and more in this. So I'm very happy. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all your inputs. Thank you for the presence. And I close the session. For those who were not here or not present, we have the studio recorded, so we put that on our website, and later people can also listen in and have a documentation what we talked on the output of our conversation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.